Welcome everybody to the next episode of the Cannabis Review. I'm delighted to be joined on this episode by Sâmia Joca, who's an assistant professor in the Department of Biomedicine at the renowned Aarhus University in Denmark. Sâmia is originally from Brazil and is interested in understanding mechanisms associated with vulnerability to stress-related psychiatric disorders. How are you keeping today, Sâmia?
I'm fine, thank you. So thank you for the opportunity of being here and also talking about our work.
I'm delighted to have you on. You're doing lots of exciting work up in Denmark. It seems to be one of the hubs of the cannabis industry globally, with so much R&D and cultivation going on, that I'm delighted to get to talk to you. Can you maybe give everybody just a quick overview in under 60 seconds of how you came from Brazil to Aarhus University and to work in a cannabis-based biology?
Yes, I was associate professor in Brazil for nearly 10 years. I was investigating the cannabinoids in the brain, effects of cannabinoids and endocannabinoids in the brain, the University of São Paulo. And then I started a collaboration here in Denmark in the Translational Neuropsychiatry Unit in Aarhus University. And as part of that, I applied for a position in Aarhus Institute of Advanced Study with this first project, investigating the effects of cannabidiol in the brain. So I moved to Denmark initially temporarily, but I could see all the benefits and all the infrastructure that the university offered as a very good place to really develop the project. So I applied for one of the positions here, and luckily I was offered the position. So I moved permanently to Denmark 2 years ago to develop this project.
Okay, very good. And it seems to be you guys are doing lots of exciting work over there. Do you want to give everybody a quick brief on what work you're doing that associates cannabinoids and the brain and the effects on it?
Yeah, we have been particularly interested on the effect of cannabidiol. That's one of the components of cannabis that has been known as psychostimulant. And already 10 years ago, we showed for the first time that cannabidiol has antidepressant-like effect in animal models. So we have been investigating the mechanisms. So more recently, we saw that cannabidiol, differently from other antidepressants, have acute effects. And we are really interested in trying to understand how this compound is able to trigger this effect, because that can actually lead us to new mechanisms for drugs that would have the same property in acting faster than the drugs we have now. So that is what we are working on, trying to find molecular mechanisms involved in the fast-acting effects of CBD.
And are these basically the effects on the brain? Is it to do with CB1 and CB2 receptors, or is there a different method for absorption for the cannabidiol to the brain?
Yeah, that is a very good question, because it seems that it depends very much in of the model that you are studying, the stress model. So I work with animals. I cannot really say it's depression, but stress models that leads to behaviors that we relate somehow to depressive symptoms in animals. And depending on the stress model, cannabidiol would act via CB1 or CB2 receptors or serotonin receptors, in this case 5-HT1A receptors. And in some other models, especially if it's chronic stress, then there is also the participation of inflammatory mechanisms or anti-inflammatory properties of CBD. So we have been particularly interested in the mechanisms that leads to neuroplasticity. And in that, we are investigating the involvement of neurotrophins and how cannabidiol controls that. So it's not clear exactly, I would say, which receptor, because it seems that depends very much into which neurocircuitry is involved or recruited in that stress model that you are studying.
Okay, very interesting. We can see a couple of the big acquisitions that have happened so far. Yesterday, there was an announcement of a 6.7 billion acquisition by Pfizer for a bowel disease based on cannabinoids. We've already had a cardiovascular company create a product, but we can see that that's really inflammation. And we know that cannabinoids work with inflammation, a specific thing. What is the avenue for anxiety and depression, which is something you guys are working on? It's obviously not a case of an inflamed brain or membrane. It's obviously another catalyst. How is it that you're basically able to target anxiety and depression with cannabinoids?
Well, in fact, it could be, that's not where we are particularly aiming. It could be an inflamed brain in some way. We know that, for example, chronically stressed animals, they have increased of if inflammation markers in the brain, activation of a microglia and so on, and cannabidiol could actually attenuate that. There are some papers showing that. In our case, it's mostly because we know that stress impairs neuroplasticity and then increase the vulnerability of developing these behaviors that are associated with depression. So we want to understand how cannabidiol is able to reverse that. We have seen in some of our previous studies that cannabidiol rapidly increases BDNF, that's brain-derived neurotrophic factor, that we know it's required for the antidepressant effect. Others have shown that if you block the signaling by BDNF, then you block the antidepressant effect of many drugs. And also we have shown it blocks the effect of CBD. So we actually want to understand how CBD can regulate the signaling by BDNF or its receptor to lead to rapid neuroplastic changes in the brain. So that is the main construct that we are investigating in the moment.
And the cannabidiol that you guys use for your trial, is it synthetic based? Is it biosynthesized? Is it plant grown? What is the metrics that you guys use for your cannabidiol?
We have tried different ones, but here in Denmark, well, in Brazil, we were using initially extracted from the plant. And then we also tried a synthetic one. And here we are purchasing, it's extracted, so it's natural CBD, not synthesized. We basically experience differences if it is in, and sometimes in the time of action when you inject. Otherwise, we don't see major differences. As far as it's pure, it's not a problem.
Do you see a scenario where we seem to be a lot of talk at the moment about biosynthesis and that kind of being the future side of the ingredient of, let's say, applied pharmaceutical ingredients, just for the clarity, the purification, and the amount of harvest you could produce per year? Do you see biosynthesis surpassing synthetic and extracted grown, or do you think extracted CBD is always going to be the primary source?
I actually think that's a very important avenue, because I think there is a return now. I don't know if it's only me who hear, but in the sound, I think that's a very interesting avenue because of the other things that are in the plant, many other terpenes and so on. So that when we have only CBD, we don't have, and there has been this claim of the entourage effect and also other cannabinoids, but that remains to be systematically tested. It's also something we are interested, but it's just in the beginning. So it can be that in some time from now, we actually see that it's not pure CBD that would be the most beneficial approach, but actually an extract that would have, let's say, CBD and cannabigerol or some proportion of other components of the plant. So I do believe this is a good way forward in terms of investigating the effects in our case in animal models and so on.
Yeah, it seems to be a case that the blends and formulations of the potential cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, and maybe one or two other molecules is going to be key to cannabis-based medicine, and where all the IP heavy action is going to be. Yeah,
I think so, and also the combination of cannabidiol and cannabinoids in general, also with other drugs in new formulations that can demonstrate to be beneficial for treating specific conditions. We have played a little bit with that regarding antidepressants, but with cannabinoids in general, as a pharmacologist, I would say first we understand what each one of them are doing, and then we play with the combinations. But that's just the mindset of a pharmacologist. So,
well, you seem to be some of the smartest people in the room, so I'll be trusting the pharmacologist over a lot of other people. Do you see basically a scenario where we have basically clip-on drugs. In my mind, the thing that makes most sense for, let's say, a manufacturer or producer of a new drug is to create a drug that clips onto something that's already there, that you're basically given, let's say it's opiates, that you're not giving somebody a highly addictive course of opiates, that it's a blend of cannabinoid-based pain formula and opiates. And that sweet spot is going to be who can create the clip-on product that already works with something that's already in the market.
Yeah, I think that's also an interesting approach. We have, for example, tried the combination in the animal cannabidiol with ketamine, for example, because we know it's used as antidepressant and it gives dissociative side effects. And we wanted to know whether cannabidiol with ketamine would, for example, favor the antidepressant effect while blocking the dissociative side effects in our animals, right? So, and it looked like from the data we obtained that it could be an interesting strategy. Obviously, it's animals we have seen in patients and all that, but I do think the next step, for example, in situations like that, where as you mentioned for opioids, that you could design drugs based on the structure of both of them and to actually go through modulating similar mechanisms. The other thing that have been explored actually, in the industry is actually chemical modifications that would lead to synthetic cannabinoid-like drugs. And this, I know, for example, for cannabidiol has been done that you have some new molecules that are similar to cannabidiol with some small modifications, and this has been investigated as an improvement of the drug based on, for example, increased bioavailability and so on. So I do think this is also an interesting strategy to be taken forward by the industry.
In a rough time estimate from 2 to 4 to 6 years, do you think that there's going to be new cannabinoids that end up being found and processed? Let's say biosynthesized is obviously going to be one of the main ways to get small amounts of plant matter and turn it into large scale batches. Do you see more cannabinoids being found in the next 2 to 4, 6 year period, or do you think it's a little bit more longer than that?
There has been a lot of development in the field, I would say, in the last 10 years. So I would expect that we will have new discoveries in this field with natural cannabinoids from other sources, because we know there are similar ones in other plants than cannabis. So I wouldn't be surprised that we would find similar or cannabinoids, similar drugs from other sources that could be of potential interest in therapeutics and so on.
Very good. It seems to be, we've nearly hit the time here now, but it seems to be Denmark are one of the center points and the leading tip of the spear when it comes to the European cannabis industry, from all the cultivation and the ornamental flower industry you guys have and the R&D work that you're conducting. Do you see Denmark playing a big part in this global industry over the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think Denmark has been very active in that sense. Have experienced in the last 4 years since I've been here an enormous growth. When I came in the first time, it was still less talked, and now I see and I have visited some companies here, and how much Denmark has grown, also promoting meetings and forums for discussions, and the industry that are exporting really a lot, and that foster the field in general, also for new discoveries. So I do think that Denmark will not only for the production, but also for the scientific development of new knowledge in this field will take a very important position in the years to come.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We're nearly at our 15 minutes here now. If there's one thing that you're looking forward to over the next 12 to 24 months in your sector of the industry, what would you be looking forward to seeing happen?
That's a difficult question. I think it would be nice, actually, then I think it would be very nice to see more clinical trials on some of the knowledge that has been put forward from the basic research. I know there has been really a lot recently, but still, for example, regarding depression, we don't have a randomized clinical trial showing if CBD is actually antidepressant or not. So if that would be there and would confirm some of the things we have seen in the preclinical model, I would be extremely happy to see that what we have been doing is really translational and promising. So.
Very good. It's been very highlighting and interesting talking to you, Sâmia. I hope we get to chat again before the end of the year and we can get an update on all the great work that you guys are doing over in Denmark. But for now, thank you very much for your time. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, and thank you for listening to us and giving room for us to talk about our work. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. I'll be continuing to do that over the next coming years. So thank you again, and until next episode, everybody.